nice of you to come out tonight. We've been playing with the House of All now. This is our fourth gig with them, and you're in for a treat if you haven't seen them before. They're fantastic. If you want to know about us, well, I think you can work that out by looking at me. I'm obviously the only one that didn't look at the weather forecast today. I'm wearing shorts and it's pissing down outside. We're going to start with two songs which we wrote. Well, the first one I wrote with my other band, The Short Stories, a long time ago, and then the second one, but they're connected. So has anybody here seen the film Saturday Night and Sunday Morning? I read the book. Yeah. So I saw that when I was about 15, and it really resonated with me because the main character in it, Arthur Seaton, he's kind of angry at the system. It's 1961, something like that. Angry with the system, rejecting his parents' lifestyle, but not really got anything better to put in its place. No idea how to improve it. And he kind of takes pleasure when he can, over drinks, he tries to get some romantic involvement, and then random acts of resistance. And it kind of ends rather open about what the future might hold in store for him. But they called those characters, when they wrote about them in the 1960s, they called them angry young men. And I thought that I was an angry young man when I was a young man. And then one day I looked in the mirror and realised I'd become an old man, and yet I was still angry. So 10 or 12 years ago I wrote a song called Angry Young Man, and then a couple of years ago I wrote a song called Falling Down the Stairs with Arthur Seaton. And we're going to play those two for you now. Hello. 2, 3, 4. Too kind. So it's not all it cracked up to be, really, this being a rock star lark. So we released our second album in January, and it's got some really good reviews, and there's a song on it called The Sea is a Pirate's Best Friend. Now, I wrote that song as a complex socio-political statement about the need for countries to be able to put their patriotism aside and end all wars and all the prejudice and cultural clashes that we have between people's belongings. But because I wrote it slightly tongue-in-cheek about the idea of being happy to have the Skull and Crossbones, everybody that's reviewed it has reviewed it as a song about how I wanted to be a pirate when I was a kid. But then again, as I'm one of the only ones here in shorts, maybe they're not so wrong. Down the hatches, the storm will pass, you'll see. Bail that water, watch those leaks, we'll ride it out together. Sleep is scarce and ration short, but we'll sail on forever. Playmates in every port, sea salt in my heart and soul. quite high. Rain slashed down on me, battering down the hatches. The storm will pass, you'll see. Hold on tight, stand up high, arm in arm, eye to eye. If I can't be a cosmonaut, I'll sail beneath the sky. Once again, you're too kind. This is a song we haven't played yet in the gigs we've been playing with House of All, because I like to explain the songs at the beginning, as you probably noticed, and this one's quite tricky. I decided to write a song. My wife's quite anxious person, and I wanted to write a song especially for her to console her and say like everything's going to be okay, but I only ended up with a verse. And then I wanted to write another song inspired by one of my twin daughters when they were little, because we were going to this play area and there was loads of people there. And I said, there's going to be loads of people there, Florence, loads. You sure it'll be okay? And she said, yeah, all these people we've never met, they're just potential friends. And I was like wowed at the depth of philosophy that my 3-year-old had that I didn't have. And then also I was reading about Vera Lynn, but I only got one verse out of that song about strangers. And then I was reading about Vera Lynn, who, you know, the Wycliffe Stover and the Old Home thing. She wrote that song, but she wanted to have a proper career, but then from 1945 onwards, that's all she was allowed to be, the person who sang about the Second World War. So I had these 3 separate bits of a song, and I put them all in one song, and they make no sense together, but there you go. These guys don't know that. But...
I didn't know that.
You ever had that conversation where people say to you, who would you really like to have seen play that you never did? What band would you like to have seen? I would have really liked to have seen Django Reinhardt, the jazz guitarist. But it's a toss-up between him and a really, I don't know if you know him, the great blues guitarist Robert Johnson, who died tragically young. And out of that idea of who would you have liked to have, or it's like that dinner party, who would you like to have in your ideal dinner party? So I wrote a song about the 6 people that I would like to have spent more time with but never met. And this is it. Sometimes I wish Robin Hood was my friend, then right and wrong would be simple again. We'd rob the rich and give it to the poor. I'd be more healthy from living outdoors. I'd say to him, Robin, I find it so very hard being a man, let alone being merry. Sometimes I wish young Prince Hamlet would call and say, Steve, you know, the readiness is all. Your mind's a prison, the jailer is you. Be kind to yourself and you might just get through. I'll say you're telling me, well, your dad was a king. Mine left school at 14. It's a whole different thing. I wish I hung out more in cafes at night, just hoping Vincent van Gogh would come by. I'd buy him a beer and say you weren't wrong, being so true to yourself for so long. He'd say to me, Steve, but I feel so all alone. So we'd swap numbers and I'd call him on the phone. I wish I hung out more with people like Sylvia and Emily Pankhurst, people that fill ya with hope for the future, treat you the way you hope that everyone is treated someday. We've discussed the future of the feminist agenda, toxic masculinity, non-binary, transgender. In one dark night, when I've got really old, I've had enough of doing all that I'm told. I'll go to the crossroads, wait there in the rain for Robert Johnson to come by again. He'd say to me, Steve, won't you come on in my kitchen? No, I won't say a word. Just sit there and listen. Thank you. Back in a long time ago, when I was a lot younger, I worked in a town called Bridgewater in Somerset, which is quite a poor town. And I used to go down there. I used to go down to a place that was called the Labour Club, and everybody there had a reason to be dissatisfied with what the lottery of life had spilled out to them. And then a long time after, I wrote a song about it. But I didn't want to call it the Labour Club because I didn't want the people there to recognise that I'd written about them. So to save them, I called it the Losers Club. But because I went there, and because it's actually about the idea that being a loser is no bad thing in the world that we have, it's not actually offensive. Days I haven't spoken to a soul. Thought I would have got out to the Losers Club, dig myself out of this hole. It's a dark street down a back street not too far from the canal. In between the shadows cast by a church and a state and mouth. It's like a gunfire that are not okay for us. The big half empty there tonight. There's rarely many out. Some goth kids, some ex-hippies, an old man who was scared. We'll talk about the plastic in the oceans and in our brains, the teenage kicks on the jukebox, archaeological remains. There's a punk rock that still runs squad names. check friend, she's been crying, she's married to her phone. She's fed up with speaking English, she wants to go back home. She says sometimes when you go out at night, it only makes you feel more alone. We're just spitting in the wind. But does that mean it's wrong to want, national health and things? We sit and sip our bitter in this land of lavish shame, and we raise a glass to everyone who's refused to play the game. But my glass is half empty, all the same. Well, that was quite fun. I enjoyed that. Bringing it right down now. My dad died almost 30 years ago, and it took me a long time after he died to write a song about him. Didn't think I ever would. My dad came from that generation that didn't show a lot of emotion, and we weren't all that close. But every year that he goes by, somehow I feel closer to him and I miss him more. So. This is for anyone who's loved and lost a family member. Dad, you were always the last in our house to bed, with your mobile library book and all your cigarettes, a final glass of whiskey, maybe a shrub and rum, drinking to the lions led by donkeys at Verdun, or staring at the remnants of the late night television, delaying workday morning with something worth your derision, and just before it finished, to show your independence, Dad just switched off and left. Oh, I grew up, I grew older, but you were never there to see anything past the bookmark left on page 17. I wish you stayed here longer. I know you had to go, but you never saw me solvent, never saw my children grow. I've got a few things right, Dad, though I've got a lot more wrong. I understand you better every day since you've been gone. The stories carried on, Dad, a result of our attention. On better days, I even think I just might find redemption.
At this stage in proceedings, I'm going to lower the tone by doing an advert, which is the European Sun LP is on sale out there, and with it you get a free CD single which contains a song which is 17 minutes long, which didn't fit on the LP. So we've made a little CD to go with the LP, and you get it for free if you buy the LP. Thank you.
And this is the title track. didn't count and SWATs weren't allowed. I remember so clearly those old golden years when football fans chanted their bigotry loud. Oh Lord, may I yesterday's rain. Oh Lord, may Britain great again. So proudly those halcyon years in a glorious, happy, victorious land. The windows and ceilings were golden like honey, cause nicotine snaked all day long from our hands. A packet of peanuts could make a girl topless. The Germans were hated, the Irish were banned. I remember so proudly those heavenly years in a miserable, murky, misogynist land. Oh Lord, may I yesterday's rain. Oh Lord, may Britain great again. So keenly those freedom-drenched years our country was truly a place to be seen. My scoutmaster had us all stripped to our pants, for we all swore allegiance to God and the Queen. A test at 11 decided forever whose hands would be dirty and whose would be clean. And the language of boardrooms and men-only clubs, like the lavatory walls, was vile and obscene. Oh Lord, may I yesterday's rain. Oh Lord, may Britain great again. Forgotten those formative days when our nation was home to the men who could win. Housewives were happy to hoover all day. Breakfast of Valium, supper of gin. That boy from Zimbabwe we called something only came once to the youth club, never came back. I haven't forgotten those formative days. I can still see them now in the Union Jack. Oh Lord, may I yesterday's rain. Oh Lord, may Britain great again. Thank you. This is our last song. We're not rock and roll, as you can tell, but there's a point in that song where I started to lift the guitar up and had a horrible thought about being Steve Diggle. So when I was about 10 days old, my parents took me home from the hospital and told me how much they loved me, and they told me that for the rest of my life, my mum in particular, which was great. And because they told me that how much they loved me and they'd always wanted me, that I never felt that I was adopted, and I never minded that I was adopted, and it never caused me any trouble. And then about 11 years ago, I had identical twins. No, not identical. I don't know why I said that. The twins, they're born at the same time. Obviously, it's in the name twins, isn't it? And they've spent. They were premature, and they spent almost every minute of their lives together. And as they've got older, they've become quite different people. And it struck me that I've maybe got the nature-nurture thing a little bit wrong, because they've had the same experiences, same school, they've turned out a bit different. So that got me thinking about my biological parents, and then I had a couple of health problems. Of course, when you go to the doctor, they say, "Has anyone in your family had this, or has anyone in your family had that?" And I didn't know. So to try and cut a very long story short, I suddenly decided, both my parents, as I call them, are dead, that I'd try and track down my birth parents, and remarkably, an ancestry researcher person found really quickly who those people were, and gave me like the name and address and details of my birth mother, and and I wrote a song about that. And I'll tell you what happened further on with that later on in the song. But this is what that song's about. Did you console me when my first breath made me cry? Were you small and smart and sensitive and shy? Were you reflected in the pale blue of my eyes when you gave birth? You gave me away for free and I hope you didn't grieve, because that was the greatest gift to a woman who couldn't conceive. And I was too precious to share, though I know that's hard to believe when you gave birth. I've never blamed you for not keeping me nearer, an unmarried mum in an unforgiving era. And after you'd gone, well, your future was so much clearer when you gave birth. But all these dark and anxious feelings deep inside, all the contradictions, afflictions and fictions that rattle around in my mind, I've been a broken hadron collider of the all too flesh and blood kind since you gave birth. Was the ancestry researcher gave me these details, and eventually I plucked up the courage, I managed to track down her phone number, and I rang up this woman that gave birth to me all those years ago that I've never spoken to or never seen. And I rang her up and I was going to play it cool, but I started crying immediately, and I told her I think we might be wrong on. And she said, "Not me." It turns out, subsequently, that she was indeed my birth mother. There's now no doubt about it, because I've met my step brother by birth, his family, who've been incredibly welcoming, and his dad was my biological father, but he's dead now. But the woman that gave birth to me, still to this day, doesn't want to be reminded of that, which I respect. And I understand, but I've still got questions for the ancestry researcher. I'm on a biblical miracle, or a state that's always hurt you. From my ambitions to my allergies, what's been nature and what's nurture, and what's it all worth since you gave birth? Thank you very much. You've been a lovely audience. Thank you. Good night. Thank you.